For years, fans had only one question: what really happened? Why did Yaman, the man whose every gesture seemed written by destiny, suddenly walk away from a love story the world thought was unbreakable? He never spoke, she never answered, and the truth, it vanished behind the curtains of fame, gossip, and carefully crafted silence until now, because this week, in a moment that no one expected, Yaman's longtime manager finally broke the code of silence. After months of tension, rumors, and half-truths, he sat down with an Italian magazine and said the words that changed everything. "It wasn't what people think," he began. "It wasn't because of another woman, or distance, or fame. It was something much deeper. Something Ken never wanted to talk about." The interviewer pressed him to continue. At first, he hesitated, like a man holding a secret too heavy to carry. Then he sighed and said, "Let's just say, love isn't always enough when the world around you refuses to let it exist." Those words hit like lightning, because everyone knew exactly what he meant. The world had always been the problem. The story between Yaman and Demet Özdemir was never just a romance, it was a phenomenon. They met on set, their chemistry was electric, and within months, fans across the globe were convinced they were living a fairy tale. Every glance, every laugh, every behind-the-scenes moment turned into headlines. But what no one saw was the pressure building behind the scenes. Their relationship wasn't private anymore, it was public property. TV producers wanted them to act like lovers even off-camera. Journalists followed them everywhere, and brands tried to turn their love into profit. Every emotion became a performance. The manager explained, "There were moments when Ken would call me at 2 a.m., saying he just wanted to disappear for a while. He couldn't handle the noise anymore. He wanted something real, not something filmed or photographed." But even as he said that, fans began to notice the tone in his voice, protective, almost apologetic. As if the truth he was telling wasn't just about business. As if he knew something personal. The interviewer asked the question everyone was thinking: did Demet know about all this pressure? He nodded slowly. Of course she did. She felt it too. But Demet, she was built differently. She's strong, emotional, but also guarded. When she realized Ken was struggling, she tried to hold everything together. But in doing so, she forgot to protect herself. That line, "she forgot to protect herself," became the headline of the night, because suddenly, for the first time, it wasn't about betrayal or jealousy. It was about exhaustion. Behind all the glamour, two people were falling apart under the weight of being everyone's fantasy. The manager continued, "They had moments when they were happy. Real moments. But every time they tried to have something private, it got stolen. A picture, a rumor, a headline. It's hard to love when the world keeps watching, judging, inventing." He paused for a long moment before saying something that changed the tone of the entire interview. The last time they spoke, it wasn't a fight. It was a goodbye that neither of them wanted to say. That sentence alone shook the internet, because for years, the official narrative had been that they ended things abruptly. That one of them walked away. But now, for the first time, there was a different truth. They didn't end it, they just couldn't keep it alive. When asked if they had spoken again since, the manager gave a small, knowing smile. "Sometimes silence is louder than any words. They may not talk often, but they still listen to each other's silence." That final quote spread across social media like wildfire. Clips of the interview flooded TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter. Every fan page used the same caption. "Shock revelation, face screaming in fear. Yaman's manager finally breaks the silence." And as hashtags began to trend, one thing became clear: this wasn't just gossip anymore, this was the truth everyone had been waiting for. But the question remained: what exactly happened behind closed doors? And what secret was so deep that even love couldn't survive it? Because the manager's next sentence promised to expose it all. The next part of the interview aired the following morning. And this time, it wasn't just an interview, it was an earthquake. The same manager, sitting in front of the camera with a serious expression, finally said what no one dared to say for years. The truth is, their story didn't end because of betrayal. It ended because of a message. One single message that shouldn't have been seen. The interviewer leaned forward immediately. "A message? From whom?" The manager hesitated. His eyes flickered down, as if even speaking about it was dangerous. "It wasn't from someone new. It was from someone old, someone who had once been part of their story. A ghost from before the fame. The host tried to push for more, but he shook his head. Let's just say, sometimes the past doesn't knock. It walks right in. Within hours, the internet exploded. Every fan page, every gossip outlet, every forum was filled with speculation. Some said the message came from an ex. Others claimed it was a former co-star, or even someone from Can's circle trying to warn him. But whatever it was, one thing was clear: that message destroyed something fragile that had barely survived the storm. The manager continued. Demet wasn't angry when she found it. She was disappointed. That's worse. Anger burns fast, disappointment lasts. The way he said it made everyone watching go silent, because people could see it now. That sadness in Demet's eyes from years ago, the way she avoided red carpets, the distance she carried in her smile. It wasn't a confession of betrayal, he clarified. It was a conversation that should have ended long before it reached her eyes. But timing is cruel. She saw it at the worst possible moment, right when they were trying to rebuild everything. And that was when fans realized, this wasn't a dramatic breakup. It was a slow heartbreak. One that happened quietly, behind closed doors, with no fights, no shouting, just silence. Later in the interview, the host asked, "Did Can ever try to explain?" The manager nodded. He did. He called her that night, many times. But she didn't answer. And that silence became their last conversation. The room went completely quiet. Then he added softly, "He left her a voicemail. Just 7 words." The interviewer's eyes widened. What did he say? The manager looked down, his voice trembling slightly. He said, "I wish I could change the moment." Those words echoed across social media like a thunderclap. 7 words, that's all it took to break millions of hearts all over again. By midday, fans had already turned those words into edits, videos, and tributes. Old interviews resurfaced, Demet talking about trust, Can mentioning how love means patience. Suddenly, everything had new meaning. But the manager wasn't done. He leaned back in his chair and said something no one expected. Even after they stopped seeing each other, they never completely disconnected. He'd still ask about her. She'd still keep track of his work. They were unfinished. That word, unfinished, became the second shockwave, because the idea that their story wasn't really over reignited everything. #Can and Demet trended again in multiple countries. One fan wrote, "Maybe some love stories don't end, they just pause." But the interviewer, sensing there was more, asked the question that every journalist wanted to ask for years. If it wasn't betrayal or distance, what was it really? What made them drift apart? The manager sighed deeply, and his answer sent chills through the audience. It wasn't a lack of love. It was the lack of peace. When two people love each other but can't breathe in the same world, something eventually breaks. He looked straight into the camera and said quietly, "They didn't fall out of love. They fell out of the world they created together." That single quote became the headline across every major magazine in Italy, Turkey, and Spain. They didn't fall out of love, they fell out of the world. It was poetic, painful, and raw, exactly what fans had always felt but never heard confirmed. Later that night, a Turkish entertainment journalist revealed that Can's manager had actually tried to stop the interview from airing the final segment. Apparently, Can himself had called him, furious that private details were being exposed. "Why did you say that?" Can reportedly shouted, "Because they needed to know it was real." The manager replied. Silence. Then, before hanging up, Can said, "One thing, you just reminded me of everything I tried to forget." And that was when people understood, this wasn't just an old story for Can, it was a wound that had never fully healed. When the third segment of the interview aired, no one expected what was coming. The host warned viewers beforehand, "Tonight, you'll hear something that was never meant to be public." And then, the screen cut to Yaman's manager, his tone different, his eyes tired. He looked like a man carrying a truth too heavy for too long. "There's something I've never told anyone," he began. "Not the press, not even the people closest to him. But maybe it's time." The air in the studio went still. The real reason their story ended wasn't jealousy, distance, or fame. It was something much more human. Ken tried to protect her, and in doing so, he destroyed what they had. The interviewer frowned. Protect her from what? From himself, he finally said. From the version of him that fame created. He explained that in the final months of their relationship, Ken had become unrecognizable to himself. Between back-to-back projects, endorsement deals, and constant scrutiny, he barely had a moment to breathe. He was living 10 lives at once, and none of them were real, the manager said. He'd finish shooting at 3 a.m., then fly out for an event at 6. He wasn't sleeping, he wasn't eating right, and emotionally, he was breaking. One night, according to the manager, Ken called him from a hotel room in Madrid. He was exhausted, angry, and scared. He told me, "I can't keep pretending I'm okay. I can't love anyone properly like this." The next morning, he made a decision, one that would change everything. He told the manager he wanted to step back from Demet, to give her the peace she deserved, even if it meant losing her. He said, "She doesn't deserve the chaos that follows me. She deserves silence, calm, a normal life. And I can't give her that anymore." It wasn't a breakup out of coldness, it was a sacrifice, but no one saw it that way, so he ended it to protect her? Yes. But she never knew that. He let her believe he had fallen out of love. Because he thought that would hurt her less than the truth. That's why her last message was just one sentence, "I wish you had been honest." After the interview ended, reporters tried to contact both sides. Demet refused to comment, but a close friend told a Turkish outlet she knew he was struggling. But she never imagined he was suffering like that. It changes everything. Ken, on the other hand, didn't issue a statement. But hours later, he posted something on his Instagram story. A photo of an empty street at dawn, with one simple line written across it, "Sometimes love ends not because you stop caring, but because you care too much." That was all he wrote. The post disappeared within an hour, but the screenshots were already everywhere. Fans cried, magazines analyzed it, and the world realized one thing: they didn't lose each other because of lies, they lost each other because of love itself. By the end of the week, the interview had been viewed over 20 million times online. Headlines from Italy to Istanbul read, "Shock revelation, face screaming in fear, the truth Yaman wanted to hide." But the story wasn't over, because what the world didn't know was that after the cameras turned off, the manager said something off record. He whispered to the host, thinking the mic was off. They spoke again. Recently. 2 weeks after the interview aired, Italian paparazzi noticed something strange. Yaman, who had been filming in Budapest, suddenly cancelled all public appearances. No press conferences. No photo shoots. No sightings. He simply disappeared. His management issued a short statement: "Mr. Yaman is taking a few days for personal reasons." The fans thought he needed rest. The media assumed it was damage control, but the truth was far more emotional, because at that very moment, Ken was on a flight, not to Italy, not to Spain, but to Istanbul. According to a close friend who later spoke anonymously, the decision wasn't planned. He couldn't sleep. He kept rewatching the interview. He told me, "There's something unfinished. I can't let it stay that way." He landed quietly, using a private entrance to avoid cameras. No entourage, no stylist, just him, a hooded jacket, and a look that said, "This time, it's personal." He didn't go home. He didn't call anyone. Instead, he went straight to a quiet neighborhood on the Asian side of the city. A place he hadn't been to in years. He parked near a familiar street, stared at a familiar balcony, and waited. It was past midnight when the lights in one of the windows turned on. For a few seconds, he hesitated. Then he got out of the car, walked to the door, and rang the bell. Inside, Demet Özdemir froze when she heard the buzzer. She wasn't expecting anyone, especially not him. She opened it slowly. Neither of them spoke. Ken looked exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. "I know I shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "But after everything that was said, I couldn't keep pretending." "Pretending about what?" "That I'm over it," he said. Silence. They talked for hours, about the past, the interview, the message, the silence between them. At first, it was tense. Accusations, confusion, half-finished sentences. But as time went on, the anger turned into honesty. I saw the message, she finally said. I know, he replied. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Because I thought it would protect you. It didn't, she whispered. It broke me. I know. And that's something I'll never forgive myself for. Do you still think about me? Every day, he said. Even when I'm trying not to. They didn't hug. They didn't kiss, but something inside both of them shifted. The years of distance, anger, and silence suddenly didn't feel so heavy anymore. When dawn started to break, he stood to leave. You don't have to go, she said softly. I do, he answered. But this time I won't disappear. Before leaving, he looked at her one last time. If I ever loved anyone right, it was you. And then he was gone, just as quietly as he came. A week later, Demet posted a photo on Instagram. It wasn't of him. It was a sunrise over the Bosphorus, captioned, not every goodbye means the end. 2 days later, Kim posted a nearly identical photo, same sunrise, same angle, but with his own caption. Some stories just pause to breathe. The posts went viral instantly. Fans went insane. Hashtags exploded, hashtag Can and Demet, hashtag reunion, hashtag not the end, hashtag love that returns. Behind the scenes, a journalist close to Can's manager revealed one final piece of the puzzle. They agreed not to rush anything. No statements, no attention. Just peace, for once. But the spark was back and everyone knew it. The morning after those mysterious sunrise posts, the internet exploded. Every entertainment outlet across Europe screamed the same headline. The world in shock, face screaming in fear. Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir post matching photos after years apart? Within hours, hashtags trended worldwide. Fans wrote, it's not just nostalgia. It's love finding its way home again. While fans celebrated, the press went hunting for answers. But Can's manager finally spoke again, this time, not in a studio, but through a short written statement. Yes, they spoke. Yes, they saw each other. And no, it wasn't a publicity stunt. What they have is real, always has been. The only difference is, now they don't need to hide it anymore. That statement broke the internet a second time. The same magazines that once called their story over forever were now writing headlines like Can and Demet, the love that refused to die. After years of silence, they finally found each other again. For the next few days, the world couldn't stop talking. Even international shows picked up the story. An Italian reporter said live on air. Sometimes, life writes the kind of scripts that no screenwriter can. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, Demet avoided public appearances, but fans noticed something subtle. She had changed her phone wallpaper. During a fan encounter days later, someone caught a glimpse, a photo of a sunrise. That same week, Can was spotted at the airport again, this time, alone. But there was no chaos. He walked calmly, smiled politely, and when a journalist asked, Can, is it true? Did you and Demet meet again? He simply replied, some things don't need confirmation. They just are. That was the first and last thing he said about it. During a charity gala in Rome, a fan asked if he still believed in love. He smiled, yes. Because love doesn't disappear. It just learns how to wait. That night, Demet Özdemir posted a story. A short clip, raindrops falling against her window. Caption, some people never really leave. Cloud with rain, red heart. The posts fit together like pieces of the same sentence. **** love doesn't disappear. Some people never really leave. The internet went wild. They're talking to each other. This is their secret language. Weeks later, the same Italian magazine released a follow-up story titled The Manager's Final Words. He wrote, I saw the beginning, the silence, the heartbreak.